Stacey Mitchell was born in the picturesque county of Dorset, England. She grew up in a warm and close-knit family with an older brother and two younger sisters. At the age of 10, her family decided to move from the UK to Australia. Stacey was always a cheerful and open-hearted girl, and her father lovingly called her the soul of the house. She easily connected with others, never held grudges, and was always eager to help her loved ones while enthusiastically exploring new things. Known for her kindness and sociability, Stacey made friends effortlessly. During her teenage years, she met two older girls through a mutual acquaintance, Jessica, 19, and Valeria, 21. Their unique lifestyle and unconventional personalities intrigued Stacey. She was particularly fascinated by Valeria, who was deeply involved in Gothic culture and claimed to have been drinking blood since she was 10. First her own and later that of others. As time passed, Stacey's behavior began to change. She frequently clashed with her parents and spent less time with her younger sisters, preferring solitude. After a particularly intense argument with her family, 16-year-old Stacey made the decision to leave home on December 7, 2006. When teenagers run away, police often reassure parents that their children simply seek freedom and will return sooner or later. In Stacey's case, her parents, despite their concerns, decided not to pressure her, hoping to maintain their relationship. They allowed her to stay with a friend before involving law enforcement. However, 6 days later, on December 13, 2006, they officially reported her missing. Stacey never intended to run away permanently. She simply wanted a change of scenery and time to sort out her thoughts after the family conflict. However, she had limited options for shelter, as most of her friends lived with their parents, who would likely ask too many questions. It was then that she thought of reaching out to her new friends, Jessica and Valeria. The two girls were older and lived in a rented house on the outskirts of the city with a man named David Haynes. Their home was spacious, and one of the bedrooms was unoccupied. When Stacey arrived, the girls offered her the vacant room for just $20 a week. Thrilled by the opportunity, Stacey accepted, realizing this arrangement could temporarily solve all her problems. On December 14th, she moved into the front bedroom of the house. She was filled with excitement. Finally, she could live without strict rules, explanations to her parents, or family conflicts. Stacey's friends were older than her, which meant that whenever she needed alcohol, they were always able to help. To Stacey, life seemed perfect. However, at that moment, she had been officially missing for several days, and her family was desperately trying to find her despite their differences. Her parents truly loved Stacey, wanted the best for her, and sincerely worried about her safety and well-being. When the Bureau finally managed to contact her, it was December 17th, 10 days after she had gone missing. The conversation took place over the phone, and Stacey told them where she was staying. Her parents didn't pressure her to return immediately. Instead, they tried to rebuild their relationship carefully. They decided to act cautiously, hoping not to lose her trust, provoke a conflict, or scare her away. Stacey reassured them that she would return home the next day, and they agreed to give her one more night with her friends. Moreover, they arranged to meet her at the train station. But when morning came, Stacey never showed up. At first, her parents thought she had changed her mind or hesitated to come back. They waited, hoping she was just running late. But as time passed, they had no choice but to return home, tormented by the question of what had happened. After she failed to arrive, her parents provided the police with all the information about her whereabouts. When law enforcement officers tracked down the people she had been staying with, they discovered that Stacey had disappeared once again. The family's worst fear became a reality just a few days later. On December 21st, a body was found, and soon it was confirmed to be Stacey. Some sources claimed that only her leg was discovered, while others reported that her whole body was found. Her remains were actually located in a large wheeled dumpster behind the house. When the details of the tragedy came to light, her family and friends were devastated. It turned out that the people she had trusted had planned her murder almost from the moment she moved in with them. With her cheerful personality, openness, and belief that friends should always help each other, Stacey began to annoy Valeria and Jessica. Tensions in the house escalated, so much so that the two girls even started arguing with each other over letting Stacey stay. They didn't like how she would walk around in her underwear, freely enter any room, and constantly engage in endless conversations. Stacey became the source of tension among her friends. Additional irritation came when their roommate, David, revealed that Stacey had been speaking negatively about his friends, criticizing their manners and behavior. This led Valeria to state that no one should interfere with how they lived, and the girls reached a radical decision: to get rid of Stacey. Instead of simply kicking her out, they decided on a more sinister route: elimination. Jessica and Aunt Valeria began discussing ways to kill Stacey, even sharing their intentions with David. Though he disapproved, he did not intervene. Later, David claimed that on December 17th, he saw Jessica grinding glass in a stone bowl in the laundry room. When asked why, she unhesitatingly replied that she planned to mix it into Stacey's food. David suspected this would lead to a slow and painful death. He noted that sharp shards could cause severe internal damage. However, Jessica confidently stated that if Stacey started screaming, she would simply silence her by burying her head in the ground. The plan required restraining the victim, but David refused to participate. Instead, he was offered the role of an observer. By then, Stacey had already arranged to meet her parents and planned to leave on December 18th. Relieved by the thought of her departure, David made no effort to dissuade his friends. On December 18th, Stacey did not show up to meet her parents. Later that day, she went with Valeria, Jessica, and David to a bridge near the highway. They amused themselves by throwing bottles at passing cars, disrupting traffic. That night, they returned home and sat around the kitchen table drinking whiskey. At some point, Stacey complained of a headache, and Jessica offered her a pill, pretending it was a painkiller. In reality, it was a strong sedative. That morning, Valeria warned David to lock himself in his room and play loud music when the moment came. As the sedative took effect, Stacey became less aware of her surroundings. David noticed Valeria holding a concrete block before turning on the music and dancing. At that moment, David retreated to his bedroom, leaving the girls alone. Stacey attempted to stand and join them, but Valeria ordered her to sit. Suddenly, David heard Jessica shout, "Now, now!" followed by a dull thud and Stacey's screams. It turned out Valeria had struck her with the concrete block. David, terrified, tried to drown out the noise by increasing the volume of his music. Jessica repeatedly entered his room, adjusting the volume between speaking to him and masking the screams. At one point, Stacey crawled to his bedroom door, attempting to grab it, but David shut it in her face. He claimed he couldn't watch, but did nothing to stop it. Jessica then blindfolded David with a black t-shirt and led him outside, instructing him to wait. He knew a murder was happening inside, but chose to flee rather than call the police. Meanwhile, Valeria continued striking Stacey with the concrete block until it shattered. Even this didn't stop her. Eventually, Jessica joined in, carrying out their gruesome plan to its end. She took off her belt with metal inserts and used it to cut off her friend's air supply. Stacey desperately tried to break free, pulling at the chains and struggling for breath, but Jessica was stronger. After some time, Stacey lost consciousness. The two friends, pleased that everything was going according to plan, squealed with joy, hugged, and headed to the table where a bottle of whiskey was waiting to celebrate what had happened. 20 minutes later, Jessica decided to check on Stacey and found that she was still alive. The kitchen was in disarray, with signs of struggle on the walls and floor. Valeria grabbed some sponges, a mop, and started cleaning. Half an hour later, Jessica checked Stacey's pulse again, but this time she was no longer breathing. Around 1:30 a.m., David called, wanting to know if the plan had been carried out. Jessica confirmed that it was done, but said they needed some time to put the house in order. She suggested David walk around for a couple more hours, and he wandered the neighborhood, waiting for a signal. Meanwhile, the girls continued cleaning. They recorded everything on video, capturing not only the attack, but also the cleanup process. The footage showed Jessica laughing and dancing in the background, with Stacey's body still on the floor. They also mocked Stacey's accent, imitating her speech. At 3:20 a.m., Jessica called David again, informing him that there were still a few traces of the incident, but that he could return. His eyes were blindfolded once more as he was led inside. By then, Valeria and Jessica had already removed Stacey's body and hidden it in a dumpster behind the house. Later, they discussed how to dispose of the evidence completely. In the morning, all three went to a hardware store to buy the necessary tools, a chainsaw, and several shovels. 3 days later, on December 21st, shortly after midnight, the police arrived at the girls' house. Jessica managed to run outside and escape. Valeria, who remained in the house, gave a false name and, along with David, tried to convince the officers that Stacey had left their home a long time ago and that no one knew where she was. 3 hours later, the police uncovered Valeria's real identity and returned to the house. This time, only David was there. Realizing that hiding the truth was no longer possible, he confessed to what had happened. He stated that Valeria and Jessica were responsible for Stacey's death and revealed where the body had been hidden. Investigators found Stacey's remains in a container behind the house, after which all three were arrested. After the arrest, Valeria was placed in a cell with an inmate named Rachel Van Ross. Soon, Rachel reported that Valeria openly shared details of the incident. The inmate was shocked that Valeria showed no remorse or guilt. On the contrary, she seemed proud of what she had done. Valeria admitted that she and Jessica had enjoyed themselves, celebrating what they called their freedom from their annoying friend. Later, Valeria confirmed that Stacey had irritated them, which was the reason behind the tragedy. She also admitted that she and Jessica inflicted about 180 blows on the victim. To some of her cellmates, she said that her only regret was that it had all ended too quickly. She wished she had spent more time on it. In 2007, Jessica wrote a letter describing her perspective on that night's events. She confessed that something inside her changed at the moment of the attack. She had never felt anything like it before. As soon as the first drops of blood hit her, she lost control of herself and could no longer stop. Based on letters and testimonies from prison, it was crystal clear. Neither Valerini nor Jessica showed any remorse or shame for their actions. The life of the young girl and the deep trauma experienced by her family, who would carry the pain forever, meant nothing to the two friends. During the trial, they laughed and behaved as if everything happening was just a game. Valerini's lawyer argued that she had a severe personality disorder and had suffered a traumatic childhood with an abusive father, who himself was serving a sentence for domestic violence. Even at the age of 10, Valerini was obsessed with the vampire subculture and dreamed of drinking human blood. Ultimately, the three individuals involved, Jessica, Valerini, and David, pleaded guilty. In March 2008, David was sentenced to 2 years in prison for his involvement, while Jessica and Valerini were given life sentences with a minimum of 24 years before the possibility of parole. Later, Valerini attempted to appeal the verdict, but the court unanimously rejected her appeal. The judge expressed deep outrage over their behavior during the trial, stating, "You had an entire year in custody to reflect on your actions, yet you show no remorse, no conscience, and no regard for human life." Furthermore, the court noted a disturbing fact. The girls seemed to derive pleasure from the violence. After the verdict, the two friends were separated and sent to different prisons. Initially, they tried to keep in touch through their cellmate, Catherine Burney, but their correspondence eventually stopped. In 2009, a fight broke out between Valerini and another inmate, resulting in 3 officers being injured. In 2020, Valerini attempted an escape, but was unable to get beyond the prison grounds. In 2014, Jessica had 20 minor charges dropped against her. Authorities decided that these incidents were insignificant compared to her main crime. Among the charges dropped were 18 instances of fare evasion on public transport, as well as smoking in prohibited areas and drinking on public transport. Meanwhile, Stacey's family continues to mourn the loss of their daughter. In an interview, her father confessed, "We think about her every day, wonder if we could have done something to change things, to save her. Maybe she would have had a child by now. I wonder what they would have looked like. It's unbearable to know we will never see her again." Stacey's older brother, just 2 years her senior, eventually moved to the UK, unable to stay in the place where the tragedy occurred. The story of these two friends is shocking. Stacey reached out to them for support after an argument with her parents, but instead, she was met with unimaginable cruelty. And David, who could have prevented the crime, simply stepped aside, overwhelmed by a panic attack. One phone call to the police could have saved Stacey's life, but he didn't make that call. Do you think his punishment was fair? We are eager to hear your thoughts. Share your opinion, subscribe to the channel, and hit the like button if you're interested in similar stories.